In 2004, two Australians both had exactly $100,000 sitting in the bank. Same age, same city, same starting line. One of them bought a house in Western Sydney. The other opened a brokerage account, bought an index fund, and forgot about it. 20 years later, one of them retired at 52. The other one is still working and still wondering where the money went. This video is going to tell you exactly what happened. And the answer is going to challenge everything you think you know about investing in Australia. By the end of this video, you're going to walk away with one specific number, one ratio, that tells you exactly which investment wins for your income level, your age, and your situation right now. Most finance channels won't give you this number because it makes one side look really uncomfortable. But that's exactly why you need to see it. Here's what I want you to sit with while we go through this. Most people watching this right now are going to get this decision wrong. Not because they're not smart, but because nobody has ever shown them the full picture. They've been handed half the story their whole life. By the end of this video, you'll have the complete one. Think about this for a second. The average Australian spends 30 years paying off a mortgage. That's 30 years of their income flowing directly into a bank's profit. And the majority of those people who worked hard, saved hard, did everything right, will retire with less wealth than they should have, simply because they never stopped to question the one financial decision that shaped everything else. That might be you right now, and it's the reason I'm making this video. Stay with me, because we're about to get into the numbers. Meet Dave. Dave's not a real person, but he could be your neighbor, your brother, your mate from uni. In 2004, Dave is 32 years old, earning $70,000 a year, and he's just saved $100,000. He wants to invest it. He goes to his dad, and his dad says what every Australian dad says: buy property, son. It never goes down. So Dave buys a house in Penrith for $450,000. He puts in his $100,000 as a deposit, borrows the rest, and becomes a landlord. He's proud. He feels like a proper investor. His mate Chris, same age, same income, same $100,000, does something different. Chris doesn't trust himself to pick stocks, so he buys the whole market. He puts $100,000 into a broad ASX index fund, sets up automatic monthly top-ups from his salary, and goes back to his life. Here's the question: who wins 20 years later? And more importantly, why? The answer is not what you'd expect. Before we follow Dave and Chris through those 20 years, I need to give you the single most important idea in this entire video. Growth is not the same as return. Most people hear Sydney property grew 7% per year and think that's their return. It's not. Gross growth and net return are completely different numbers. The gap between those two figures is where most investors' wealth quietly disappears, and they never even see it happening. That gap has a name. It's called friction, and once you learn to see it, you cannot unsee it. Let's follow Dave first. His $100,000 becomes a 20% deposit on a $500,000 property. Right away, Dave has leverage. He controls a $500,000 asset with just $100,000 of his own money. That's a 5-to-1 ratio. And if the property grows at 7% per year, Dave has gained $35,000 in year one on a $100,000 investment. That's a 35% return on his capital. Not 7%, 35%. That is genuinely extraordinary. This is the part where every property spooker stops talking, because Dave also has costs. Before he's even picked up the keys, he's paying stamp duty, roughly $17,000 to $21,000, depending on the state. Conveyancing, building inspections, mortgage setup fees. He hasn't bought a brick yet, and he's already down nearly $20,000. Then the holding costs kick in. Every single year. Council rates, water, maintenance, property management fees at around 8% of rent. Insurance. Those costs sit between 2 and 3% of the property value per year. On a $500,000 property, that's $10,000 to $15,000 leaving Dave's pocket every year. It never stops. It compounds against him the same way growth compounds for him. Dave's real net return after all costs lands at roughly 4 to 5% annual capital growth, plus gross rental yield of about 3 to 4%. Total return, 7 to 8% on the property value. Not bad, but not the magic number the brochure promised. Now here's where it gets interesting. And this is the part most people don't know. In just a moment, I'm going to show you the one number that actually explains why property investors look richer on paper and why that number might be almost entirely an illusion. But first, let's follow Chris. Chris's $100,000 goes into a broad market index fund. Entry cost, $10. Annual management fee, 0.1%. That's basically $1 per year per $1,000 invested. The ASX 200, with dividends reinvested, has returned roughly 9.7% per year over the last 20 years. The S&P 500, accessible to Australians through ETFs like VGS or IVEV, return around 10.5 to 11% annually in Australian dollar terms over the same period. Chris's $100,000, sitting in an index fund from 2004 to 2024 with no extra contributions, grew to approximately $650,000 to $680,000. That's without leverage. That's just time and compounding doing their job, while Chris did nothing spectacular. No tenants calling at midnight. No pipes. No agent taking 8% of rent. No council rates. Just a number on a screen, quietly growing. But here's where I have to be honest with you about what the stock camp never wants to acknowledge. Property has a tax advantage in Australia that is one of the most powerful wealth-building tools available to anyone earning a serious salary, and it's called negative gearing. When Dave's investment property runs at a loss, meaning his rental income doesn't cover his mortgage and costs, he can deduct that loss directly against his employment income. Dave earns $120,000 a year. His property is losing $15,000 after all costs. He gets taxed on $105,000 instead of $120,000. At the 37% marginal rate, the government is effectively handing Dave over $5,500 back every year as a tax refund. Over 20 years, that's more than $110,000 back in his pocket through tax savings alone. The government becomes his co-investor. That structural advantage is something stocks cannot replicate for high-income earners. Stocks do have something most people overlook: franking credits. Australian companies pay their corporate tax before they pay you a dividend. If your personal tax rate is lower than the 30% corporate rate, the ATO writes you a check for the difference. It's the government paying you to hold Australian shares. It happens quietly inside most super funds every single year, and most people have no idea. Both assets have real tax advantages. The question is which one fits your tax bracket. And now, the hidden killer inside each investment that neither camp wants to talk about. Both assets have a killer. Understand yours, or it will cost you everything. For property, the killer is liquidity. Think of leverage like a physical lever, the kind you'd use to move a boulder. You push down with 100 kilograms of effort, and you move 1,000 kilograms of rock. That's the magic. But here's what nobody puts in the brochure. If the boulder starts rolling back, it crushes the lever too. Sydney fell 15% peak to trough between 2017 and 2019. Melbourne dropped over 11%. If you needed to sell during those years, you couldn't sell 10% of your property to raise cash. You couldn't quietly exit. You were locked in, paying agent commissions of 1.5 to 2.5% plus capital gains tax just to get out the door. Selling a property can cost you $20,000 to $30,000 in exit fees alone. You're fully exposed to the boulder. And at 5 to 1 leverage, that exposure is massive. For stocks, the hidden killer is simpler. It is you. Studies consistently show that individual investors underperform the index by 1.5 to 2% per year on average. Not because the market is rigged, because of what people do during crashes. The ASX dropped 37% in just 33 days during the COVID crash of 2020. People who panicked and sold locked in those losses permanently. People who did nothing, or better yet, kept buying, recovered fully within 5 months, and went on to record portfolio highs. The asset didn't fail them. Their own psychology did. Chris's strategy looks passive. It is not. It requires you to sit completely still while your screen shows you losing $40,000 in a month and do absolutely nothing. Most people are not capable of that. And the ones who are, those are the ones who end up wealthy. Here's what almost nobody in Australian finance will say plainly. Over a 20-year period, Dave's leveraged property investment in Penrith will likely produce more total nominal wealth than Chris's unleveraged index fund. Dave ends up with roughly $900,000 to $1.2 million in total equity. Chris ends up with around $650,000 to $680,000 in portfolio value. Property wins on paper, but not for the reason anyone tells you. The underlying asset, residential property, does not grow faster than the share market. The ASX has outperformed residential property on a like-for-like, cost-adjusted basis over almost every 20-year period in Australian financial history. Full stop. The reason Dave looks wealthier is one thing, and one thing only: leverage. The bank will lend Dave 80% of a house and charge him interest for 30 years. Nobody offers Dave 80% leverage on an ASX index fund. That difference, that single structural fact, is where the entire gap in outcomes comes from. If you could borrow at the same 5-to-1 ratio to invest in index funds as you can to buy property, the stock market would win decisively over 20 years. It's not even close. The difference is not the asset. It's the capital structure attached to it. So what does this mean for you specifically? If you're in your 20s or early 30s and haven't bought a home yet, property makes sense as a starting point. Owner-occupier stamp duty concessions, first home owner grants in most states, and the psychological discipline of a mortgage forces a saving habit that most young investors struggle to maintain voluntarily. The leverage advantage is real, and the government incentives are genuine. If you already own your home and you're looking to invest your next $100,000, the data increasingly favors index ETFs. Lower entry costs, full liquidity at all times, global diversification, and zero tenant headaches. You're already building equity in your home. Let the next $100,000 compound freely. If you're a high-income earner in the 37 or 45% tax bracket, the negative gearing arithmetic on a second investment property is very hard to ignore. At those marginal rates, the government is returning close to half of your investment loss every year. That changes the numbers dramatically in property's favor. There is no universal answer, but there's a framework for finding your answer. Here's what I want you to sit with before we get to the final verdict. The Australians who are financially free in their 50s, the ones with real options, who can choose whether to work rather than having to, they didn't get there by finding the perfect asset. They got there by making a decision, committing to it, keeping their costs ruthlessly low, and never letting fear or greed make a single move on their behalf. That's the whole formula. No secret ETF, no suburb that nobody else knows about, no complicated strategy, just compounding, consistency, and the discipline to stay still when everything inside you is screaming to move. The people who didn't make it weren't lazy or careless. Most of them were trying hard. They just kept reacting, selling at the bottom, chasing the top, switching strategies every 2 years, paying high fees because someone convinced them they needed more sophisticated help. Every single one of those reactions cost them. 20 years from now, there will be 2 versions of you. One who started something today, held it, and has genuine options. And one who waited just a little longer, researched one more video, optimized one more time, and ended up in the exact same position they started in. The gap between those 2 people is not intelligence. It's not income. It's not luck. It's just the decision to start and the commitment to not stop. So, $100,000 in stocks or $100,000 in real estate? What actually wins in Australia? Here's the final answer. Over 20 years, leveraged property in a well-chosen Australian location will generate more total nominal wealth than an unleveraged stock portfolio starting from the same $100,000. That's what the data says. Dave ends up with more money on the spreadsheet. But stocks invested in low-cost index ETFs will produce outstanding real returns with near-zero friction, full liquidity every single day, and a strategy simple enough that your 15-year-old could execute it. And if you could apply the same leverage to stocks that the bank applies to property, stocks would win decisively. The best investment is not the highest returning one. The best investment is the one you will actually hold without breaking for the next 20 years. Back to Dave and Chris. By 2024, Dave's Penrith property has grown to approximately $1.1 million. His equity, after paying down the mortgage for 20 years, is around $780,000. Chris's index fund is sitting at $660,000. Dave has more money. Dave also spent 20 years managing a tenancy, dealing with maintenance calls, refinancing twice, and losing sleep during the 2017 correction. His time, his stress, his mental bandwidth, all spent on one asset in one suburb. Chris spent those same 20 years doing whatever he wanted. Who actually won? The fact that you're not sure is the whole point. Stop asking which asset is better. Start asking which asset fits the life you actually want to build. That question is worth more than any comparison chart ever written. Before you go, one thing, drop a comment below right now. Stocks, property, or both? 2 seconds. I read every single comment in the first hour after a video goes live, and I'll reply personally to as many as I can. It also genuinely helps me understand what you want more of on this channel. If this video shifted something for you, gave you one number or one idea you hadn't considered before, subscribe to Aussie Finance with Buffett. Every week we do exactly this. Deep, honest, numbers-first analysis that most Australian finance channels are too careful to publish. No fluff, no sponsor de opinions, just a full picture. Hit the notification bell, because next week's video is one I've been building for a while. We're going to run the real numbers on which specific suburbs and which specific ETFs are best positioned to outperform over the next decade in Australia. Real data, real projections, nothing held back. That video drops in 7 days. I'll see you there.